Hey there, folks. It's Joe, aka the Beardy Wine Guy here, and welcome to the first in hopefully a very infrequent interview series. We're going to be calling it Interview with the Vampires. So this is basically a series where I interview the amazing people who work in the hospitality industry, from sommeliers to waiters, business owners to pint pullers. It's all really informal, and I wanted to highlight all the hard work that goes into running our favourite places for socialising and entertainment. Today, I'm joined by a very special guest, Alex Dilley, good mate of mine who I used to work with at Bottles, and now he's gone on to, well, we won't say bigger and better things, but he's gone out into the world and is now the head sommelier at Bath Priory Hotel Spa and Restaurant. Whereabouts is that, mate?
So we're about maybe a mile outside of the centre of Bath.
Outside of Bath, all right. So yeah, beautiful. Oh, Bath Priory, of course. It's a beautiful area. So that's great. No, thanks for joining me. I haven't seen you for a while, obviously, with all of this stuff going on. So it's really cool. But every now and then we all join up and drink copious amounts of wine together, and get a bit squiffy. And it's great. I figured when we were going to start is how did you get into hospitality or into wine, really? Like when did it all kick off for you?
Yeah, wine was kind of after uni, really. It was just basically dicking around, didn't know what I particularly wanted to do, and just ended up. Rich had just opened Bottles at that stage, maybe 5 months before.
Okay, because we've recently done the 5-year anniversary of it opening, so it can give you a bit of a timeline there from when you were starting to go.
Yeah, and then I kind of started off working behind the bar there, and then very, very fortunately there was a copy of the Wine Atlas by Jancis Robinson.
We've still got that. It's a great book. It's massive, and it's got everything you need in there. Yeah,
it's for anyone that's a visual learner. It's like the best book.
Yeah,
you can have. But it's got everything you need in it to get sort of a basic understanding going. But yeah, it was from there I then started. At that time, we still had like a proper wine shop as an add-on.
Yeah.
And I started doing a few shifts in there, and then on one of the sort of the wine tastings that Kev couldn't make.
Yeah. So Kev Sambrook, who I'm hoping to get on at some point, he's brilliant, absolutely amazing wine educator. And I did my qualifications with him, and you did yours. Did you do level 3 with him, or?
No, I actually did it after I left Bottles. I did my WSET.
Okay.
They hadn't started putting the courses on with Kev yet when I think a year. Then moved up to the Cotswolds. Very short stint as running beverage at a hotel there.
The hospitality industry, if you can find a great place, you'll want to stay there for ages. But sometimes the chemistry isn't right, or different circumstances, and you don't have to go into that. But it does happen. I've had a couple of jobs where I've been asked to seek employment elsewhere, but I think it was nothing I did. It was just it didn't quite work out. A clash of personalities and things like that.
That's it. And for me at that stage as well, that was my first job, and not as a commie in many ways. So it was first time doing ordering, first time running service, first time doing all these things, and it was just kind of the environment wasn't there for getting proper support. So on my second day, they chose to sack their restaurant manager.
Yeah. So it's overwhelming, and if you're not following someone who's going to give you advice or support, then you just realize how much actually goes into the job, and you grow into it, I suppose.
Yeah, it was too much too soon for me to be successful at that there. I think I then moved down to Limewood and did 18 months there.
Yeah.
And then up to the Priory, where I'm running wine and bars. So
amazing. I mean, you obviously have a good amount of experience now. Do you have a personal philosophy on wine, or is it just
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I'm not sure. It's probably not as developed as what I'd to be called a proper philosophy and that kind of thing, but it's wine in kind of hotels and that kind of environment. It's about keeping things accessible, and just not putting anyone, like, people are some people are worried enough about coming into the hotel and asking questions and things like that, and and it's stems from where previously, like waiters or maitre d's or whoever might look down their nose at people, and you'd feel being judged. But I think generally hospitality's moved away from that quite a lot now. In the what I like doing and what the people I work with like doing is we like telling the stories of the products we're selling. We like the products we sell. We're passionate about giving these products to people, and we want to talk about them.
Yeah, I think wine nowadays is it's less about the whole. I know people still pour the wine, and it's all very and but I think we take more of a holistic approach to it. So people are interested in the history, how it feels, what it makes you think of, what are the tastes, and yeah, you're right. It shouldn't be intimidating. If it is, then you're not doing your job right, essentially. No, I'm totally along the same lines as you with wine, and it should be for everyone, not just for people who can afford to buy £100 bottle of Bordeaux or whatever. There's great stuff out there at all different price points and levels of experience, and things like that. Yeah. I mean, do you have a favorite wine? This is something that I get asked all the time, and I hate it because I don't have an answer.
So I normally answer that question in two ways when people ask me that. Both are honest answers, but both are different. Is that I don't have a favorite wine because there's too many. That's just impossible to say. There's areas that I prefer. So if someone was, I'm a big fan. I generally drink more white wine than red. So I love whites from the Northern Rhone, love Viognier, love Marsanne, love Roussanne, love Chêne from South Africa. I think that's potentially some of the best value white wine in the world at the moment. But then I also love Malbec. I was lucky enough that I went over to Mendoza last year, and just the way they operate and some of the things they're doing is awesome.
Yeah, fantastic. I think that's something that will broaden your horizons in terms of wine when you see it growing there, when you speak to the people who are on the ground making it, because it can seem a little bit separate when you're just getting the bottle. You don't really think into the process, but then when you see it in place, and I mean, you don't have to travel to Argentina to do this. I mean, England has lots of vineyards that you can go and do wine tours and things for very reasonable price. I mean, France is just across the pond. It's there are opportunities, and it's especially if you pick it at the right time of season, it's glorious. Really, really beautiful thing to see, isn't it?
I mean, it's great. You can hop across to, well, not at the moment, but under ordinary circumstances, you can hop across to Bordeaux in you're probably in the air from Birmingham, you're probably in the air for 40 minutes.
Oh, really? That short? Wow.
Maybe if I have Southampton over to Bordeaux, which is you're in the air for 30 minutes. So,
yeah, and I mean it.
Okay, yeah. So I'm just due to go to Carver at the start of April, start of May.
Wicked.
One of those.
Yeah.
Hopefully that's going to be rearranged as well.
Carver, a blend. If you don't know anything about blends, maybe hit up my podcast, Beardy Wine Guy podcast. We talk about blends. Before we started recording, I had a look at what Alex was drinking. Give us a shout, because he always drinks interesting wines. So AA Badenhorst, can you tell us a little bit about that?
So yeah, Adi Badenhorst is one of the guys that's kind of responsible for big promotion in the Swartland in South Africa. Mm-hmm. So him, along with a couple of other guys, Evan Sardi, Chris Molyneux, and one or two others, they have really sort of promoted the Swartland, and where they've had some really old vines there, they're making some awesome stuff. And what I kind of love about the area is that it's the area where the growers seem to act as a real collective. So I watched an interview with Ardy the other day, and the one kind of thing he said that really stuck out was that a rising tide lifts everybody. Mm-hmm. So they're really keen on promoting all of their wines together. It doesn't matter to them whether you're buying
So it's
and where
it's a real cooperative in a sense.
they're like just a real collective kind of spirit for they're producing really good wines as well. Like they're just outrageously good.
Now is that a varietal wine? Wink. That's in the podcast as well. I explain what varietal means. What's in it?
Yeah. If you haven't watched episode 6 of the
Episode
podcast,
6 now. Yeah, it's really coming along.
Yeah.
We'll be on 10 soon.
Get on that. But no, it's a blend. So there's 7 or 8 varietals in the blend.
Mm-hmm.
Chenin Blanc led, so it's 25% Chenin, and then Grenache Brie, Grenache Blanc, Roussanne, Marsanne, Semillon, Viognier, Colombar.
Right. Okay. So it's there's some real complexity there in terms of what's going on.
And this one's cool as well because Ardi makes he has 3,500 litre barrels that he makes of this each year. So he makes 7,000 litres. That's it.
Yeah. And you'll find that pretty much all over the world. That it's small batch stuff coming out, but obviously that's going to indicate hopefully some kind of quality involved. There's a lot of love that goes into it. Now, is there what kind of difficulties do you find when you're working as a sommelier? Are there some things that come up constantly in terms of people understanding what's going on?
In terms sort of specifically guest facing stuff, there's a couple of things. Like, if I'd say one thing is never be afraid to say how much you want to spend. Like, it doesn't, like, I honestly couldn't give a monkeys whether you want to buy the cheapest bottle or spend $3,000 or spend 200 quid, however much you want to spend. Like, don't care, right? That's so, like, wherever it is, I want to try and find the best bottle of wine at that price point for you.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't matter to me if I'm picking from under 30 quid, under 50 quid, under 70 quid, under 90 quid. But just it makes my job a lot easier if I have that kind of guide as to where I'm going to be in. So, because you can lose credibility quite quickly. Although the more you work in hospitality, the better you get at reading people and sort of guessing what the budget's going to be.
Yeah.
You lose credibility really, really quickly if the guest isn't giving you any indication of how much they want to spend, and then you pitch bottles at 30 quid, 20 quid, 40 quid, and they want to spend 120, or vice versa.
Yeah. I used to be quite militant about not asking how much people wanted to spend. But people will think you're trying to rinse them. Yeah. If you go straight for the expensive, this guy wants to try and take all my money. It's not the case. If you can give us a guideline, then we can start thinking about it in terms of,
exactly.
ranges.
That's the thing, is that asking how much is never the only question that I'm going to ask. It's always, like, in fact, a question that I ask that in many ways gets me to that answer is, what do you like drinking? And if they're reeling off wines that I know cost 120, 150 pounds, whatever, then that's more or less where I'm going to pitch.
Yeah, but then what we'll do in our mind, if they say wines that cost that much, but their budget is half of that, then you can start using your knowledge of the wines to start picking common threads and give them a recommendation that suits them more than that. There is an art of upsell, but you're not going to be upselling someone by massive amounts of money. It'll be an extra £5 or an extra 6 quid or 10 quid max. Usually for me, I don't want to go too high.
And I mean, for me, I'm not averse to downside. If someone says, "Oh, we don't mind spending 80 quid," I'm definitely not averse to recommending something at 50. It makes here or there no difference. Like, I get more enjoyment from seeing people enjoy their meal and thinking, "Oh yeah, wow, this wine's actually exactly what we wanted."
Sure.
The price is irrelevant.
You don't want to be forcing a square peg into a round hole, really. You want it to be spot on for them, so they enjoy the whole experience. Yeah, absolutely. All right. So what would you say was your best experience in hospitality? The one that you actually came out of it and thought, oh, you felt massive pride, or you felt like you'd done an amazing job, or something like that?
I think kind of working in actually smashing out a function or a wedding or things like that, like where it's pretty big numbers. So we did I think maybe 120, 130 person wedding.
Yeah, that's no messing.
Limewood, and yeah, kind of just smashing that out and just delivering a pretty on point service throughout. There wasn't really kind of many things that went wrong, and nothing, guests didn't notice anything that might have not quite as smooth as we would like. So yeah,
Sure.
it's
Sure. And then you get that, like, I suppose your reward is getting fantastic feedback and everyone's super happy. And that's when you go,
yeah,
like,
exactly.
that's when you know that, you know, you're hopefully doing your job, touch wood, in the right way.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I mean, you do quite high end wine tastings, I imagine. You know, yeah.
So yeah, every every so often we do sort of just we do a few slightly more informal ones where it's kind of just me talking and showing people through 4 or 5 wines. And then occasionally we have wine dinners as well, where ordinarily we might have a winemaker in or a master of wine or something like that.
Yeah. And then I mean, are there any particular challenges that you find doing the dinners with extra winemakers, with the winemakers?
Not especially. I mean, as long as all the wine arrives on time and that kind of thing. It's normally with events like that where people are paying to come. Everyone knows what they're getting. They're coming to pay to listen to the winemaker speak as well for the food. And when the mindset's already geared to that, then normally those are, touch wood, pretty smooth.
Yeah, I suppose you're right. You know, they're paying a set amount. They know exactly what they're getting. So you're not going to get many people turning up and saying, "Oh, I didn't know it was going to be like this." They've generally, you know, got themselves ready to do a wine tasting. I suppose the informal ones in that case are the ones that can be a little bit trickier. And they have lots of preconceived notions about what it's going to be like.
Yeah, and when it's a mixed group as well, it's slightly difficult to know what level to pitch at.
Yeah. Sometimes I get bookings for groups and it's 6 people, and then I'll find out 10 minutes before it's a hen party or something, and I'm like, oh Christ, there we go. Not sure I'm going to be doing much wine tasting in terms of education. And generally what I do is I sit down with them and have a laugh and a joke, and we just drink the wine, and they're usually happy with that. Yeah. What about, because a segment in my podcast is wine myths. Is there anything that crops up a lot for you in terms of things that either they're completely wrong about or they're misinformed?
So yeah, I reckon there's a few that stand out. One is I don't like Chardonnay, which I think you've covered in one of them, isn't it? It's just fair enough. Like, if 90% of people that say that haven't tried different styles of Chardonnay, and what they mean is that, like, 1990s oaked to hell, that they've just chucked a load of chips in it, Aussie Chardonnay, and which is fair enough. But not many people are going to be drinking that these days.
Jacob's Creek.
Yeah. But it's also in most environments, it's still a bit rude to then comment when they order their glass of champagne. Do you know this has actually got a bit of Chardonnay in it?
Sometimes, depending on who it is, I can be a bit cheeky. They'll go, "Oh, I just don't like Chardonnay." I'll go, "What, all of it?" And they'll go, "Yeah." I'm like, and then what I'll do is I'll get a house wine which is young and unoaked, and I'll say, "Okay, try that." And they're like, "That's not Chardonnay." I'm going, "It is," and that's the whole point. Is we're there to, you know, show them alternatives. If they go, "I don't like that," I'll go, "That's fine. We'll just wipe Chardonnay off the map." And there are other things that you can go for, but if you can open it up a little bit, then that's awesome for me. When I have someone, you know, keep coming back and drinking Chardonnay, I'm like, oh yes.
And then the other is that it's kind of in a similar ballpark to that. Is I don't like French wine. I don't like Chilean wine. I don't like Argentinian wine. It's like, really? Like, how? Fair enough. Like, if you've tried everything stylistically different from Argentina or Chile or France or wherever that you can. It's like I was doing a tasting today. It was Chardonnay from Chile, actually, was what I was doing. And so I had 4 Chardonnays, each from different regions of Chile, at different price points as well. So from, I think the cheapest bottle was £8.80 up to £18. So not expensive, but and just the differences are huge. Like there's difference in climate, difference in soil, difference in oak regime, difference harvesting, massive difference.
There's so much range, and I don't think that's because people just seem to think that Argentina, it just makes Malbec, and if they don't like Malbec, they don't like Argentinian wine, and that's when you have to go, well, okay, we don't like Malbec, that is fine, mate, but did you know they do this or this or this? I get why, especially European stuff is super scary because of the way that they handle things in terms of, you know,
not putting a bottle on it and
not putting a grape on it, sometimes not even explaining, you know, what you're going to be getting from in terms of flavor or anything like that. They'll just plonk Chablis on there and they expect you to know, and if you don't know, they go, well, we don't want you drinking our wines. That's the way it seems to me sometimes upsetting when people go, oh, Chablis, no, oh no, I'll just have, look, this one says Chardonnay, I'll have that one. I'm like, oh, but it's really good.
Yeah. And that's the other thing. It's like with Malbec, say, there's what they're doing in Mendoza at the moment. They're kind of really digging into the different terroirs they have and things like that. So like the guys that I used to work with pretty much all said, we don't really like Malbec, it's a bit boring. Which I can see that. Like some cheaper Malbecs are a little bit bubblegummy, they haven't got much tannin, they're just meh. Yeah. But it's when you get up to, say, the Uco Valley that goes up to sort of 1,500 meters and has really stony soils in when it gets higher and things like that, it's making some really quite angular wines that have got notable acidity, notable tannin, and are really quite cool. So there's and they're putting in different appellations as well. So they're getting different styles, different qualities, and there's massive variations.
I mean, the problem is when I talk to Alex about wine, is that we can waffle on for about 8 hours about everything and anything. But as this is an interview, I'm going to come away from talking specifically about wine. And obviously this question, let's not name any names or anything that might get you sacked. But are there any things in hospitality in general that irritate you, either customers or just the work in general, or, you know, are there any things that you find difficult?
Customers wise, not really. I mean, I always say with customers, like, you get 10% are like engage with you loads, are really there to have a good time, like, and you just get on really great with them. That's about 10%. About 80%, 85%, fine, get on fine. They're kind of nice enough, and that's awesome. And then 5% you get are just there for, like, some people just walk in and they're there to complain. Like, occasionally, it's not often, but every so often you get one of those, and it's like, yeah, whatever, fine.
I think that's almost universal. You know, not just in bar or anything, but restaurant, in the whole of the service industry. It almost holds true, that 5% for everything across the board. And it can be, you know, sometimes it can be quite upsetting, considering that you've served 200 people and they've all been in that top bracket of 10%, and then you'll get that one, believe they're being known as Karens, boomers, whatever you call them, difficult, and that can just completely alter your mindset on a service. And I think as you gain a little bit more experience, you start to learn to brush it off a little bit better.
Kind of custom, and then staff-wise and kind of on team-wise, it's quite a bit. You get a massive amount of diversity in hospitality teams in terms of how seriously people take the job as well. Now, I know we're all low skilled workers, whatever else.
Well, apparently, that's what the 5% say generally. But
but you do get people that are there, like some people who have just taken the job whilst they're at uni just to earn a bit of extra cash, and they turn up, do work, fine, go home, that's it. But you also do get the potential that are like myself and whoever that are kind of more career hospitality, like this is what I want to do, this is why I've chosen to do it. And it's about engaging with those people as much as you can in terms of kind of improving and like each other and learning and things like that. And
I mean, you can still be proud of the work you do. You may not be looking to do it full time, but it's great if you can take some pride in your work. And what you were saying about, people, seeing it as a stepping stone and assuming that you're the same is something that lots of people who, want a career in the hospitality industry find on a regular basis.
Yeah, that was always, I think I've probably been asked that twice, is, so what are your plans for the future then? What are you going to move on? Yeah, and it's like, just this. This is it.
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing wrong with, working it part-time if you need some money and things, but I'll say, please don't come in and think that, one, it's easy, and two, that you don't need to put any effort in terms of physical and mental effort. It's one of those jobs that's right up there.
By and large, is good fun, and
that's why we do it. If it was an absolute grind the whole time, then we wouldn't be doing it. We'd find something else to do. And I suppose the opposite is, I was going to ask you, what do you like working in hospitality? But I suppose we've already kind of addressed that a little bit in terms of,
But yeah, it's meeting people, really, like that 10% of good customers that you get that really engage. It's great fun, and it carries you through, and then you get the opportunity to meet winemakers and things like that, and go and visit places and do that. And it's something that they told me as well. It's like working in hospitality like we do, is that when you build connections and things like that, like you get to go places and do that and see things. You can go and do stages in different places if you want. Go and do bits and pieces here and there, and that's like, and because you have the connections and because you work in the industry, you get to do that sort of a discounted rate or whatever. And it's that's what other people work in their jobs to get to go and get to these places that we're at. Things like that.
Yeah. I mean, we call them business trips. But our businesses, we get to try lots of wine. It's not a jolly. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it is, but a lot of the time you do actually have to do some work. We don't just drink every wine we see. We have to spit it out, which I know is criminal, but you have to do it when you're trying 80 different bottles of wine in a kind of a portfolio tasting or something like that. You'll be on the floor, which won't look good on you or whoever you're working for.
Exactly. Yeah, I remember. I think the first portfolio tasting I went to was with Rich, and it was I can't even remember what one it was now, but yeah, I reckon we went through probably just over 100 wines that day, and that's and yeah, not that I'm looking for sympathy or anything, but it's pretty tiring.
It is, and when you're trying that many different wines, you have to take a break halfway through because your mouth is just stinging with flavour. You end up not being able to distinguish anything because you've just been hit with so many different. You have to kind of take half an hour off and just flush your palate, and I generally
when the last 4 wines tasted are all tasting the same, then it's time to take a break.
Yeah, when you're working through 10 Burgundies and they're going, oh, can you taste the variation in this Burgundy? I'm like, Christ, I can just about taste its wine now. It's time for me to take a rest. Not that we're asking for sympathy, honestly. It's a joy to do things like that, especially when the people are super passionate about their wine and they're watching you intently.
If you're tasting with the winemaker as well, that is always a massive privilege to be able to do that and just get a bit of on what
they just have a wealth of knowledge, so you can just pick their brains, which is great. For people who like us who can waffle on about wine for years, those guys are basically us, and they love it. They absolutely love it. Yeah. Oh, I had a question here which was interesting. I wanted to ask you this. What's the oldest wine you've tasted?
Ooh.
Because people seem to think age equals quality, but you can get some wines that age really well. So I'm interested to see which one's the oldest.
Still regular wine. So are we excluding port?
No.
So port, I think possibly 19 or 57.
Holy crap. Wow.
Yeah, I think that's. But then still wine. At Limewood, we sold a bottle of 1967 Chateau Montrose with Bordeaux, but I wasn't working that day, so I didn't get to taste that.
Unbelievable. Yeah. Unbelievable.
Tasted Riesling from 89. Lynch Bars from 73, I think, is possibly the oldest.
Mm-hmm. I think my earliest is probably something around the mid 80s. It was probably a Bordeaux of that kind. And I'm cheeky. If someone will order a bottle or I see them drinking it nearby, I will ask if I can taste it. If they say no, then yeah, cool beans. But more often than not, they'll go, oh yeah, have a splash. And I'll just work on it for a bit. It's some of them are special, but the problem is that, when some wines get beyond a certain age, that I've had people bring in bottles of wine, which, I found this in my granddad's cellar or granddad's attic. It's from the 40s, What do you think it'll taste like? And I generally go, probably vinegar, mate.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like if wine isn't stored properly, it's fucked.
Yeah. And when people buy these bottles of wine for, hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands, it's generally a little bit like art. That's not for drinking. You kind of put it in a cellar and you look at it. Which
I've never seen the point of that. Don't get it.
It seems completely alien to me. But then again, spending 10 million quid on a painting seems that way to me.
True.
But whatever you get out of it. But yeah, for me, wine is meant to be drunk at some point in its life. Yeah.
And that's it. And there's quite a few wines aren't made for aging either. As you said, it's like most Sauvignon Blanc, a few examples aside, are meant to be drunk within 5 years of vintage or 4 years.
Yeah. Generally, if a white hasn't seen oak, it's generally going to be drunk young. I come up with it's not completely accurate, but when people ask me, I have to give them a general rule to go off.
Generally that's true. Yeah, except like Chenin Blanc from the Loire might be an exception. Things like that. But
there are always exceptions.
Yeah, generally that's true.
Yeah. If in doubt, ask your wine merchant, bartender, whoever you're talking to about wine. If you want to put it away and age it, ask if it's got potential. More than happy to tell you. It's actually really refreshing when someone says they want to age a wine, because generally it's can't wait to get the cork out.
I mean, even if you bought it from the place, just go into somewhere else. Most people aren't.
Yeah. I love seeing new stuff. It's really cool. That's probably when you'll see me at my most. As a head sommelier, what responsibilities do you have?
So I do run service on the floor is the main. It's probably the most day-to-day one. So yeah, I'm in charge of the wine service. At the Priory at the moment, I'm also running the bar. So in charge of bar service. I quite often hop on the bar if necessarily, and make the odd cocktail and make a semi-decent old-fashioned and things like that. But and then taking customer orders and engaging and being that point as well, that point of contact when.
Do you have control over the wine list in terms of sourcing and things like that?
Yeah. So yeah, I'm also in charge of curating the wine list and so yeah, putting that together and the wines by the glass and rotating them and getting things off and on. Same with the bar list as well. So yeah, rotating products, keeping it interesting.
And in terms of designing a wine list, are you looking for? Are you because to me it sounds like the amount of variety in terms of wine it can seem a little bit mind-boggling, because you're not only, because it's a restaurant, you're looking for things that you can pair with dishes, multiple dishes, but also you know, standalone wines, special things, and this and that and the other. I mean, how do you go about designing it? Is it always a bit of a brain twister, or?
A little bit. I mean, it's in terms of pairing, it's about just kind of looking at the tendencies of the chef and seeing what kind of ingredients they like to use and what's in the season and that kind of thing. And it's most decent restaurants, their menus change at the very least seasonally. And it's about just having enough scope and enough space on the list to kind of keep your wine so it suits all seasons. Like you need to have a wine that will pair well with fresh asparagus when that's in season, when it's game season to have that, when it's mushroom season to have something in there, and kind of thing. So that's, your menus will always kind of lean towards those areas.
Sure.
But then in terms of actually curating the list, it's about finding balance, about knowing your clientele, so knowing what, like if your clientele is very classic, then it's about having a decent selection of Bordeaux and Burgundy, things like that, as well as keeping something for people that might want different. It's about balance, and then it's also, I always reserve a certain percentage for just things that I'm interested in. Not a particularly large percentage, just that if someone wants to come and specifically wants me to speak about a wine and hear what I have to say, then I'm more often than not going to push them towards one of those. So it's, those that I'm passionate about the most, and they'll always have a place on the list that I work with.
Absolutely. I was going to bring up kind of wine and food pairing, because it's something that I've been reading into quite a lot. I still find it quite tricky. It hasn't really got set rules. You know, it's something that you kind of have to, you know, get a feel for. I'm getting there, but how did you kind of learn about wine and food pairing?
So I learned the basics as most of it in kind of, I think WSET level 2, they start talking about it a bit, and it's kind of just salt, acid, fat, heat, and how they interplay with different aspects of the wine and blah blah blah. And then it's tasting things. So like everyone, one of the first pairings you learn for that is blue cheese and sauternes. Things like that, or foie gras.
Blue cheese, foie gras, sauternes. Those are your biggies for that one. The problem is that you don't always come across foie gras things.
And that's it. It's and things like say muscadet and oysters, or pickerel and oysters, and things like that go out. But it's also like there's really not many what I would call perfect pairings. No. Like, for example, I don't actually like foie gras and sauternes as a pairing. Like, I think it's too rich. Like, I don't really that level of richness, rich on rich wine and food, really do it. So it's so subjective, and everyone likes slightly different things. There's like probably 70% of the pairings that you do get on fine. They're not perfect, but they don't. The food and the wine don't disagree. And there's 20% or 10% of pairings you can do that, you know, that is absolutely banging. That's on point. And there's some things that just don't work. And around most pairings you do fall in that 70%.
What I try and say to people sometimes if they're trying to think of food and wine pairings is think of where it's grown, where it's from, and then go for cuisine that's local to that. So if it's grown, you know, along the coast, think seafood. If it's grown, you know, if it's grown in kind of Argentina where they have lots of cattle, think beef. If it's in Spain, think of, you know, seafood, but also things like spices or pork or grilled lamb or things along those lines. And you can kind of piece it together. It's not always perfect, like you said, but it's a good rule of thumb
Yeah,
if you're not
exactly.
sure.
It's yeah, I think yeah, like yeah, local wines go with a local cuisine generally. It's like Cabernet Franc from the Loire and Pigeon go really well.
Mhm.
Goat's cheese and Sancerre. Yeah, there's loads of examples throughout the world that
Um,
go well like that. One thing that I do like is simplicity on complexity. So I like quite simple foods with quite complex wines. I think
mhm.
works really nicely. So the best example I have of that is fish and chips. Go down wherever, spend whatever fish and chips, that's £6, £7 on fish and chips, and then with like premium champagne is
Oh,
awesome.
that's naughty, isn't it? That feels naughty, but I imagine it's pretty damn good because it's about cutting through fat, isn't it, with sparkling wine?
Yeah.
So yeah, you know,
You have the
same
grease,
with.
the batter, and the oil and things like that against the massively high acidity of
Mhm.
champagne.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah, but there are no set rules. That's the whole point. If you're having champagne, you don't have to have something fancy as long as you're thinking about, you know, is it going to clash too much? That's the whole point. Are there any no-goes for you in terms of food and wine pairing?
Again, it's a personal thing. So there's some like lighter dishes I wouldn't have with heavier reds, and there's things like that. But I also chilled reds are massively underused with some fish
Sure.
dishes,
Sure. So
especially meat.
like Gamay, Pinot Noir, along those sort of lines.
Gamay, Pinot Noir. Yeah, especially when you chill them down slightly to
Mhm.
12, 14 degrees.
Yeah.
Um, then yeah, they work really nicely. Yeah, no goes is because I think it's such a personal thing. Is
Yeah.
not really.
It's
Try it
massively
and
it's
see if
massively
you like.
subjective. I mean, what's the worst that's going to happen, really, if you know drink a Malbec with some fish?
Exactly. The
It's not.
worst thing you're going to do is take a mouthful, think, no, that doesn't work. Right, I'll keep the rest of that bottle for later.
Yeah, I'll eat me fish first, and then I'll drink the wine. You know, it's not the end of the world. It's not going to end if you slightly pick the wrong pairing. But people are so terrified of getting it wrong, and the whole point about learning about wine and appreciating it is you're going to get it wrong sometimes. You know.
Exactly that. It comes up in the restaurant sometimes as well, is that people won't like the pairings that I do,
Mm.
and that's fine. And that just needs to go down. It's down to personal preference a bit. In the
Yeah. You know,
every like,
if you get multiple ones of those, then you kind of file it away and go, okay, maybe I'll put it with something else or whatever else. But yeah,
if 80% of my guests are coming in and saying, oh, that pairing's a bit rough,
that's
not a fan
getting
of that,
that's getting changed
and yeah,
pretty quick.
I'm like,
Yeah, that one's getting changed pretty quick. Yeah, no, that's cool. Right, so I thought I'd put your food and wine pairing to the test. You mentioned asparagus, okay? So could you kind of pick a pairing for asparagus and give your kind of reasons why?
sure. So asparagus is something that is traditionally quite difficult to pair with because it is very fresh and very green generally. Um, so the kind of things that you go with asparagus could be some Sauvignon Blanc.
Because Sauvignon Blanc does have sometimes an asparagus-y kind of vibe to it,
Yeah,
quite
it's got
pungent.
that herbaceous note to it and things like
Hmm.
that. I prefer Loire Sauvignon than New Zealand Sauvignon just because the aromatics are a little bit more delicate.
Yeah,
Whereas New Zealand Sauvignon can sometimes go into that passion fruit. It's like tropical kind of, and be like if you open a bottle of New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc 10 feet away, quite
yeah,
often you
it's
can.
extremely pungent stuff. Yeah.
Whereas Loire Sauvignon is a little bit more reserved. Might even look to something like Touraine,
Hmm.
so like Chenonceau or Cote de Genois, something that's not quite as mineral driven as Sauternes or Pouilly-Fumé, just
Yeah,
something that's a little bit straight up.
makes sense.
Uh,
Yeah.
so that might be where I go towards with asparagus. I think you can do it also a lot worse than pair some English wines with
Sure.
asparagus. Um, yeah, there's plenty of decent kind of crisp, fresh, lean English wines around that aren't perfect, but they fall within that kind of 70%.
Yeah, the thing is, but asparagus is you know it's something that you don't want to be masking the flavor of it. It's a pretty it's a great flavor. So you're wanting something to be fairly crisp, fairly light, like you said, aromatic, maybe with some herbaceousness going on. And like you said, yeah, just slightly enhancing rather than just drowning out, essentially.
It also depends a little bit on how you're cooking your asparagus as well. If you're doing it in a pan with half a ton of butter, then you can.
It's a little bit richer.
Yeah, if it's just kind of sticky. As much as I hope that chef wouldn't just send out 2 spears of asparagus that are just steamed on a plate. That'd be it. A little bit to work with.
Yeah. No, and there you go, folks. Like you've just heard, like Alex break it down. I mean, it's not too difficult. If in doubt, ask people in the know, and we will do our best to match to it. That's essentially it. You know, how big is your wine list, or how much do you have in the back? Because you a bigger hotel.
Bins wise, at the moment, I might be on about 500, 550.
There you go. And he has to at least know a good amount of stuff on all of them. So when people say that we're low skill workers, I think you can throw that out the window. Okay. Yeah. Right. Brilliant. What I would say is I'll finish on one last question. It's been great to have you, mate. And yeah, like when it's safe again, I would love to come up and see you up in Bath. That'd be really good fun. We could go and paint the town red or white or rosé, however we fancy it. So what I was going to say is there anything that you know now that you would have liked to have known when you were first starting out in the industry?
I mean, there's probably a few things. It's like in terms of the more you learn about wine, the more you realise there is to know. So it's no one has ever known everything there is to know about wine. You never will. It's never going to happen. It is. There's always the chance that the guest is going to know more than you. It's just always a possibility.
Yeah, and never try and blag it.
Exactly. Yeah, always just be honest, and it's and also try your best to not be judgmental of guests either. It's I know it's difficult sometimes not to be, but I also remember like at the Pig when a guest was, I can't remember exactly what they said to get on my nerves a bit, and then I went back and the F&B manager was on the station, and I decided, well, this guest, blah, blah, and it's like, yeah, just cool it a minute. Right, this guest might not know that much about wine, but he could also be the doctor that ends up saving your life when you need some kind of surgery. Absolutely. So it's like never judge a book by its cover and things like that. Like keep trucking on, like learn as much as you can on the job as well, because like the work, it's if you're working 12-hour days, 14-hour days, just try and learn what you can, and also just there's so many funny moments in hospitality. Like some people do some hilarious things.
Absolutely.
I've got one story that I'll tell you about. The funniest thing I reckon that I've seen in hospitality is this was not in my current job. So
go ahead. Go, just name names, do anything you want, man.
So we used to have a menu, and so we used to do mac and cheese on this menu, right? And it was pretty popular. It was on the kids menu, but if adults wanted it, it was on a courtyard menu as well.
Yeah.
And so chefs come in, 5 or 6 different tapas style dishes, and they've all gone out, and the mac and cheese got sent back. And chefs looked at it, put a fork through it, and it's like oil, right? It's just grease. How much is it? And then the head chef asks the line cook, kind of, what's happened here? What have you done? Like, have you put cheese sauce in this? Yeah, chef. Yeah, chef. Are you sure? Yeah, chef, definitely. Because is it split or something? Like, what's going on here? No, definitely cheese sauce, chef. Send out normal, chef. Right, okay. Well, show me. So he's gone over, and right next to the tub of cheese sauce is the tub of mayonnaise.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what he's ended up doing is sending mayo, mac and cheese.
A mac and mayo.
Mac and mayo, and it's just oily as hell.
Yeah.
And just so like this is supposed to be 5-star dining, 3 rows. Like this was like probably, it wasn't like anything, it was 3 rosette level good stuff, and they sent mayo, mac and cheese, and there's no way for chef to tell that the head chef that's running the party, you can't, because it's got grated cheese on top of it and parmesan crumb and that kind of thing, you can't see.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that was so funny when it came back. And then
they went, have a try.
Yeah,
that's usually what you do. You taste it. What's wrong with it?
Cleaning down the kitchen that night as well. The same chef that did this was like not working hard enough, not working as hard as the rest of the team. Like, they've been there. It's a long day. Like, being a chef is so much harder.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, I've done some stints in the kitchen. It's not something that I'd want to do. Those guys are absolute savages.
Yeah, like this guy was half-assing it coming the other day, and one of the chef de partie is just kind of, what do you think you're doing, big man? You put mayo in the mac and cheese. Fucking work harder. Just I was just sat on the table at the time, and it was just so funny. Yeah, that's mayo, mac and cheese is one of my favourite. Happened.
See, I was hungry, but now I've thought about that, I'm not so hungry anymore. I think I'll leave it. Okay. Oh, thanks so much for calling in, mate. It's been really good talking to you, getting your insights on everything hospo and wine. Like I said, I know we could do this for hours, just talking about wine and things like that. But yeah, once we're all up and running, buddy, I'll come up and see you. Thanks, awesome, mate. All right, so that was the first episode of Interview the Vampires. It was with Alex Dilley, head sommelier at Bath Priory Hotel Spa and Restaurant. Remember that you can follow me on Facebook on page Beardy Wine Guy. I've got my back catalogue of all of the podcasts, so hit those up as well. There's lots of good stuff in there. That comes out weekly. And most of all, stay safe, and I'll see you when I see you. Ciao for now.